What's going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfawn Orbital. Let's see how many times you can say that's what she said to yourself during the entirety of this video. All right, so this is going to be a demo video for the Longboi, the longest boy. This is from Kennedy Custom Props. It is a full custom one-off hilt. It is long. It's huge. It's a good size. I mean, it's massive. It's definitely two hands. It's a two-hander. But yeah, this thing is a very large hilt. So I do want to talk about the install. I want to talk about the chassis. And then obviously we are going to talk about how to use it. Then we are going to put a blade in. I'm going to try not to hurt myself. Yeah, this thing is huge, right? So I'm going to try not to, I'm going to be really easy with it. And I'm going to go slow. And then we're just going to put a blade in it and just, yeah, we're going to do a quick demo and then we'll be on our way, right? So anyhow, with all that out of the way, let's come into Fusion. Okay, here it is, the chassis. Now, you might be looking at that hilt and saying to yourself, it's a large hilt. And then you look at this chassis and you're like, that chassis is very small. So look, it's not always the size that matters, folks, right? Okay, so here's the chassis, right? Very regular size, average. Some might say average size chassis, right? I'll talk about why I chose to go with this size chassis when we come up top. But yeah, basic chassis, okay? Battery tray is here. At the bottom, we have a 28 millimeter speaker. That is my dog. On both sides of the chassis, I do have some heavy greebly work, okay? Plenty of room to do so because we have a 28 millimeter internal diameter here, right? At the top, we have our Profi board. I have started doing this in all of my chassis builds, right? I've got these two forks that help to secure the Profi board in place, right? So the Profi board does slide up underneath this lip and then kind of slides back forward underneath these two forks just to kind of help it to secure in place, right? So that way you're not like gluing down the board or anything. You can kind of pop it forward and then pull it up whenever you want to config it. There are two rectangular LEDs in this chassis as well. Of course, I've been doing this a lot lately with my builds, right? So I blue and a red rectangular LED here. Along the other side, we have our kill switch. Now, very keenly eyed people will know what this greebly is. I have not put this on my chassis in a very, very long time. This is a universal greebly from Lucasfilm. I completely forgot about these and I have not used them in a long time, but that's what that is, right? Up top, we've got a 6-rail PCB connector. This is from Stardust Sabers. And that is it. Nice and easy, nice and simple, nice and average, right? Let's come up top. All right, so this thing barely fits in frame, right? I had to squeeze this. It's uncomfortable almost. It's so big. Anyway, so here it is. This is the longest boy. I'm calling this, I called it the Cal, the Kennedy Custom Props Cal. I think Adam from Kennedy Custom Props called this the longest boy. He did another version of this hilt called the Longboi. It is long. It's long, it's big, it's thick, it's a good sized hilt, right? So right off the bat, I'm gonna talk about Adam and Kennedy Custom Props and folks like Adam, right? Everything about this hilt is machined and hand turned. Not hand turned, he doesn't like crank it on a wheel, but it is made on a lathe. Nothing about this hilt has been JB welded or kit bashed. This is a fully handmade hilt, right? Everything, the knurling pattern, this has all been knurled on a lathe. And you know, it's just like a no-brainer to me, right? If you've got a lathe, why would you not knurl your grips? I mean, this just looks fantastic to me. I like that he stepped down this pattern from the top. I love seeing this. I love seeing Adam progress in his craft. I have been following Adam for a very, very long time. One of my first custom hilts was from Adam, right? So he's a very talented guy, and I feel as though people like Adam, some of the machinists in the community, go overlooked at times because they do put a lot of, and that's a travesty because they put a lot of work into these hilts. And yeah, a lot of these details go. It's easy to overlook a lot of these details, right? A lot of work goes into this stuff, right? So I can appreciate stuff like that, right? So with all of that out of the way, this is a large hilt, right? So I did not want it. Obviously, I didn't. Okay, my Apollo is pissed. Let me just get Apollo. So right off the bat, this thing is huge, right? So I did not want to create a chassis that is this long. I mean, it's just not feasible to do that. It would be completely ridiculous. I mean, what are you going to do with all of this space? It's just too much, right? So I had a couple of options, right? So I didn't want to make a chassis that was just this long, because then you'd have a lot of space for, I mean, this is just too much space to cover for speaker, right? You're going to lose a lot of sound. So what I chose to do was extend. I made a PCB holder, essentially, that is extending all the way. Are you hungry, buddy? What's going on with you? So essentially, I made a PCB holder that is this long. That way I could make a regular size removable chassis that would go in the bottom of the hilt. Okay, so there is essentially like a stem here that holds a 6-rail, the male end of the 6-rail PCB. So this grip is held in place with some hardware here. So if you do want to remove this grip, you can do so by just unthreading this hardware, and this whole grip will come off. But you don't really need to do that, right? The chassis comes out through the bottom pommel. Okay, so let's do that right now. Let me get an Allen key. So the pommel is held in place with a set screw down here, okay? So loosen that set screw. Now, something to take note of. There is a spacer down here that keeps the chassis from going all of the way down to the bottom of the pommel, right? So there is sound venting in these kidney-shaped holes here, but I designed the chassis to sit just above that, right? So there is a spacer here with some kidney-shaped holes in it. So just take note of that. It's just loose in here. It is not glued in place. And then here is our chassis, okay? Chassis has been done in pewter rub and buff. There are those 2 accent LEDs. This is obviously already on. Okay, and we've got a battery in here. Okay. All right. So once you get your battery in, right, you can put the chassis in the hilt. It doesn't matter which orientation you put it in. Slide it all the way in, and then you can put your pommel in place. Kind of make sure the pommel's pressing that chassis up a little bit, and then tighten that set screw. Now, let's talk about these quillions. So these quillions, this is another thing that Adam made, right? He turned this polycarbonate on his lathe, and these are custom quillions, right? All of this hardware, all of these Graveleys, all this brass, this is all made by Adam, right? Which I really, really appreciate stuff like that. Okay. So I wired up both of these quillions. So these have 2020 NeoPixel strips, double-sided inside of them. I put Mylar in front of them, and then I wrapped them with some cellophane. I essentially tried to treat them as though they were blades, like I was making a blade, but they were relatively thin on the inside, so I didn't have a lot of room to work with. Okay, and there are those quillions. Okay. Okay. So let's come down to the bottom. Something that I'm completely neglecting to mention and show off is this crystal chamber. Just another really highly detailed part that was made by Adam, and this magnetic door cover. Again, something that is not easy to do. Line up magnet holes with another part. I know because I've tried and failed miserably, right? So that is it's not really a marble, it's not really a crystal, just a really unique quartz piece in there with a bunch of like brass bars. Just a great detailed crystal chamber. Okay. I'm going to try not to hurt myself. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got on here. Oops. All right, so I'm going to put a blade in this thing. I'm going to try not to break anything. So this is a 1-inch blade holder. There is a custom blade plug as well. Adam usually includes these with all of his commissions. So this is a custom blade plug. This lower, there are two knurled thumb screws. This lower one is holding the blade PCB, the lit blade PCB. So do not unthread this. You want to use that top one as your blade retention. So 1-inch blade rested on those PCB blade pins. Tighten it and you're good to go. So let's try and not break anything here. Ready? All right. Man, this thing's massive. Yeah, I'm gonna hit my ceiling fan. So I'm not gonna swing it around too much. See what else we got. So those quillions are their own blade in the config. One of the other things that I set up, that I used for this config, that's the first time that I've used it, is pull down power, right? So these switches have been set up as a pull down power. That way I could use that extra pin for the quillions. That's how I got away with using a 6-rail PCB in this build, okay? So those quillions are their own blade in the config. Wow, it's massive, 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 massive. Just huge. Okay, one more. Okay, all right, that's enough. So that is the Longboi from Kennedy Custom Props. I want to give you another look at that crystal chamber. Just a great, highly detailed crystal chamber. You know, just great work all around on this thing, right? So anyhow, to the customer, thank you very much for trusting me with your build. If anyone has any questions about this particular build or anything really, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.